I'm back. You thought I was going to say for more, but I wouldn't do that. That's too obvious to say I'm back for more. But I'm going to say I'm back, and I'm here to talk about Ratt. Ratt is, maybe some people, some of my friends or people that know me might be surprised that I like Ratt. Maybe it doesn't fit in with what people would consider the other bands that I like and the other bands that I've done their discographies: Anthrax, Slayer, Faith No More, Metallica, Iron Maiden. I love Ratt, and I make no apologies for it. Why should I? I'm an unabashed Ratt fan. This genre of, you know, the Ratt was in this genre of what later, I guess maybe in the last 20 years or so, has, in the internet age, has become known as hair metal, and it has a very negative connotation, hair metal. And some people really don't like it. I understand it. I don't really care one way or the other, but it's nothing to get upset about. And it's accurate. It's actually pretty accurate. A lot of these bands, I'm not saying Ratt in particular, but a lot of these bands, they focus maybe not specifically on their hair, but on their looks. Looks were very important for this kind of music. But enough about that. I'm going to talk about Ratt. I've been a Ratt fan since 1984. They were, maybe, I'll talk about this later, maybe something significant about Ratt. Maybe my most important concert in my 36-year concert history ever. Ratt might be the most important one, which I'll tell you why I'll tell you why. That's like the lyrics from Round and Round. But I'll tell you why if you stay tuned. I'll tell you why Ratt was maybe the most important concert of my concert career, and then something else about Ratt concerts. So I got into Ratt in 1984. I'll get to that also in a minute. But before that, before I got into them, they had an EP. I'm going to get to that. I'm going to start right now with their discography. I don't have the actual EP. I had it. Ratt is one of the few bands that I've bought every single one of their releases. I think they had one compilation that I didn't buy, but of their studio records, I did buy them all. But I don't have this with me, so you'll imagine that I'm holding up the Ratt EP. This was an EP they released in 1983. This was, I didn't get into that at the time. As I said, I got into them a year after that and went back and bought it. But the 83 Ratt EP had Tell the World, You Got It, a cover of Walking the Dog, an early version of Back for More, which was later on Out of the Cellar next year. And maybe my favorite Ratt song, it's hard to say. I was going to say my favorite Ratt song in their entire catalog was You Think You're Tough. If you remember the video, You Think You're Tough. But you know, it's weird to say that my one single favorite song was out of everything that came next. It's like there was nothing better. So, but I'll say You Think You're Tough is maybe I'll talk about my favorite songs from each album. You Think You're Tough is for sure my favorite song from the Ratt EP in 1983, and one of my very favorite Ratt songs in their whole catalog. It was and still is a great song. I listen to that song pretty regularly. I don't know if I go more than a couple of months ever in all these years without listening to You Think You're Tough. And I watched the video a couple of nights ago. That was one of my favorite videos too. That had everything in it. Ratt videos were great back then. So yeah, You Think You're Tough, maybe my favorite. So the Ratt EP, nobody really knew about them at the time. Maybe in LA, people knew about them, but it was a good EP. I can't really say too much about it because I went back to get that after I'd already known Ratt, and that changes things a little bit differently when you follow a band in a line, you know, linear. You discover them at this point and you see them as they continue, and then to go back is a little bit strange. But the Ratt EP was a great introduction to a band. They were maybe a little tiny bit, I wouldn't say heavier, but maybe not quite as glam sounding as they came to be. But the Ratt EP, from there they went to a classic album, Out of the Cellar. This is people would call this their signature album, Out of the Cellar. By far their biggest album. It's 2 or 3 times platinum. Now, I mentioned earlier why Ratt was maybe the most important band in my 36 plus years of going to concert. Ratt was the very first band that I ever saw, ever in my life. I saw Ozzy. I was, and still am, a big Ozzy fan. And Ozzy was playing in Toronto, my hometown, where I was 14 years old. This was April 25th, 1984 at Maple Leaf Gardens. And Ozzy was playing, and I bought tickets to it. It was my first concert. Slade was supposed to open that show, but Noddy Holder, the singer of Slade, I think he had something wrong with his voice. He had some kind of surgery, or I don't know if he was sick or something, so Slade had to drop off that tour. So this band called Ratt was replacing them. Now, I think at the time I'd never heard of them, but in the weeks leading up to the concert, Round and Round started to get some radio play. So I knew Round and Round. So when I saw them on April 25th, 1984 at Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto, I was very excited. I thought, oh, okay, this is a cool band to see, and I loved Round and Round at the time. So I saw them in another interesting, I'm getting away from talking about their albums. Interesting thing about that show is before the show, I was outside, very, very excited. This is my first concert, 1984, the glory years of, hard rock and heavy metal, maybe from 83 to, I don't know, 89, maybe something like that. I was 14 years old. It was very exciting. We had a bottle of rum. We were drinking a little bit, my friends and I. And we saw this guy standing outside around the corner, I think on Church Street, around the corner from Maple Leaf Gardens. This big, big, tall guy with long blonde hair, and he was surrounded by, I want to say it was girls. Maybe I'm making that. A lot of people. There were girls for sure. And so my friends and I, we noticed that. And then we went in and we saw Ratt, and we said, hey, that guy, the guitarist for Ratt, was the guy we saw outside. It was, of course, Robin Crosby. So I can't say I met him, but I walked past him. So that was my Ratt concert story. Now I'll talk more later about my concert history with Ratt. I'll stick to the albums for now. This was Out of the Cellar. I got this, if I remember correctly, I got this later for my birthday. My birthday is November 6th. So I think I got it for my birthday. But I guess I knew Wanted Man, Back for More. Lack of communication was, I remember in that summer, I've talked about this with Metallica, Anthrax. There used to be a lot of metal radio shows back then. I used to go camping with my family in the summer, and I used to love to listen to the metal radio shows, and I taped them. And on one of my mixtapes, if anybody remembers when you used to tape things off the radio, it's such a foreign concept now. I had lack of communication for sure, and maybe, I think that was the only one. I taped Round and Round. It was on the radio all the time. So Lack of Communication was the first song I heard other than Round and Round, which was in constant play on the radio. And I loved it. I thought that guitar intro, I loved the sound. It was a new style of music. And then, so I finally did get this album for my birthday, I think, in 1984, and I loved it. Became, and still is just a killer for the genre. Every single song is perfect on this album. Maybe my favorite, something that was interesting, I think, about Ratt compared to some other bands is I loved Ratt's singles. Sometimes other bands, the singles were, to me, very different than the album, and they were obvious, like, single choices. The Ratt singles were just as good. I think they were a good representation of the albums. I don't know if anybody knows what I'm talking about. But, and they played the videos all the time. I never got sick, at least of Wanted Man. Wanted Man is maybe my favorite on this album, and one of my top Ratt songs ever. But Lack of Communication holds a special spot for me because it was somewhat of my introduction to Ratt, other than the Round and Round, which is, you couldn't get away from that in 1984. Man, I love every song. You're in Trouble, Fast as Lightning in a Gun, In Your Direction, great guitar intro to that, She Wants Money. Scene of the Crime, the last song, was 3 years later when Appetite for Destruction came out, Sweet Child of Mine. Sweet Child of Mine, the opening reminded me of Scene of the Crime, that guitar. So I don't know, I'm sure it was a coincidence. I don't think Guns N' Roses was sitting around, saying, or Slash didn't come up with saying, I heard this from Ratt. But I don't know, I'm sure I'm not the only person that's that's noticed that, but it's something that I've never really now hear people talking about. I'm Insane was another great song, fast and not heavy, but a very high energy Ratt song. So this album, this is a classic of the era, a classic of the 80s, especially of this style of music. I think everybody loves Out of the Cellar. Maybe my favorite Ratt album. I have some other ones that I'll talk about, but it's hard not to like this album. I love it. It's been a while since I listened to the whole thing. I listen to some songs all the time. I listen to Wanted Man many times a year. I listen to Wanted Man. I love that song. All right, so Out of the Cellar. If you don't know this, what's wrong with you? Where were you all this time? Where have you been all this time? After Out of the Cellar, they came up out of the cellar to invade your privacy. This was Invasion of Your Privacy. This came out in 1985. I think it was the summer. And I remember the ads in the magazine for this. They said they came out of the cellar and now they're going to invade your privacy. Something like that. This one, I remember hearing this, I think for the first time, also when I was camping. I want to say I was in Goderich, Ontario when I first heard this, or some songs from it. And I don't know why I didn't get this album at the time. I have no idea why. I don't know if I even ever had this on vinyl. It might have been much, much later that I bought it on CD. I bought this, I used to write the dates of all CDs. I bought this on August 13th, 2004. Very strange, because I got my first CD player in 1989. I don't know why it took me 15 years to buy this. Maybe I must have had it on vinyl. I can't imagine I went 15 years without listening to this album. I know for sure I never had it on cassette. This was, I think everybody agreed that this was as good as Out of the Cellar. Maybe some people liked it more. What was really amazing about Ratt was you could, and maybe I'll talk about this as I go on. Really, I'd say from Out of the Cellar, maybe even up to their last album in 2010. And this is not bad. If anything, it's good. They all sound the same. Like really, it's like they went in 1984 and they recorded, 70 songs or 60 or 70 or 80, whatever songs, and all at once. And they used everything in the studio. And then every 2 years, much longer than that later, but they put out 10 songs every 2 years to make an album. This, to me, sounded identical to Out of the Cellar, and then they continued with that. So just amazing. The opening guitar riff of You're in Love. Gary Holt from Exodus. I know I'm a big Exodus fan. He said years ago, 15 years ago or something, that he was, there's this kind of battle between the thrash metal guys, I guess what you call them, and the hair metal guys. And generally speaking, hair metal people didn't like thrash metal, and thrash metal people definitely didn't like hair metal. But many years after, 10, 15 years ago, Gary Holt said that all the thrash metal guys loved You're in Love, or at least the guitar. They had to secretly admire Warren DeMartini. That opening from You're in Love, they specifically talked about. You're Struck by Lightning. Amazing guitar. And I should say Warren DeMartini. I think him and Warren DeMartini and George Lynch were the hair metal guitar heroes of the 80s. I think everybody loved. I was a much bigger Ratt fan than Dokken fan. Dokken to me was, they were okay. I liked them, but never anywhere near the favorite of Ratt. And I'm going to talk about another band that was a competitor to Ratt. But Warren DeMartini, the guitars on this album, and I think on the Ratt EP and Out of the Cellar and all the others, everybody loved Warren DeMartini. Maybe if you were a thrash metal guy or a more traditional metal guy and you thumbed your nose at this kind of music then, you didn't want to admit it. But Warren DeMartini was great. And nobody ever maybe gave Robin Crosby a lot of thought. I guess, I'm not sure how much he played as the years went on. But Warren DeMartini, sorry to say it, was I think the star of Ratt. Great guitar. So this is another one. I love every single song on this album. Favorite is maybe You Should Know By Now, maybe, or also You're in Love. Those are both great songs, and also Lay It Down was a great single. in 1985, You're in Love and Lay It Down were constantly on the radio, but I think especially on when they showed these metal videos, they were constantly on. And like I said, I loved Ratt videos. Closer to My Heart was their first. Another kind of unique thing about Ratt is it was around the early to mid 80s when the power ballads started to become a big thing. I think it started with Home Sweet Home by Motley Crue. That wasn't the first ballad ever. It wasn't the first metal ballad or the first power ballad, but I think that was the one that made people really pay attention, and they had a video for it, and it was huge. And Ratt never really did. They did a few ballads. Closer to My Heart was not full ballad, but I guess as close as Ratt got. But I think because they never did a video for the ballads, that was maybe why they never reached the heights of Motley Crue for sure, and maybe later some of their other peers. Maybe that was, bad at the time or good at the time and good now or bad in retrospect. But Ratt was never known as a ballad band. They were more a rock, fun party band. So yeah, so this album, Invasion of Your Privacy, it's a perfect twin to Out of the Cellar. And I think the next one was too, which I'm going to talk about after I say one more time, Invasion of Your Privacy. The next one was Dancing Undercover. This was 1986. Amazing about Motley Crue. The other thing I was going to say, comparing the other bands, I'm going to put this down for a minute and talk about when I was a 14, 15, 16-year-old metalhead kid. All my friends and I, we used to talk about, there was this huge, it wasn't competition, but this not even rivalry. There was Ratt and Motley Crue. Those are the top two bands of that era or genre. Judas Priest and Iron Maiden were huge too, but they were more traditional heavy metal. But of this glam metal, if you want to call it that, or hair metal, whatever you want to call it, Ratt and Motley Crue were the kings. They were the Slayer and Metallica of that world. And I can say other than Shout at the Devil, I don't think I ever liked Motley Crue more than Ratt. I was always much more of a Ratt fan. Shout at the Devil is as one single album, Shout at the Devil for me is better than almost any album I've ever heard in my life. It's in my top 10 albums ever, maybe top 5, I don't know, but Shout at the Devil is amazing. I like it better than any single Ratt album, but other than that, as an entire catalog or discography, to me, Ratt is miles above Motley Crue. Ratt didn't really they had one bad album, which I'll talk about later. But Motley Crue, every album was a little bit different, and Ratt was, I think Ratt was more the same, even more than AC/DC. People used to always, say, not necessarily in a bad way, but AC/DC, how they do the same album over and over again. I think Ratt albums were more similar from one to the other, I think, than AC/DC albums. I think AC/DC was more varied than Ratt, and Motley Crue was too. And again, that's not good or bad. Ratt really had a formula. Nobody ever called them out on it. I have not even no problem with it. I love it. I think Ratt, their formula was great. Like I said, they had the same sound, same style. They had 10 albums on every song. They didn't have instrumentals. They didn't really have ballads. All their songs they didn't sound the same, but they had more or less the same vibe to it. They had that Ratt energy. They all had, from the intro to the time the vocals came in, it seemed like all of them, probably a couple of on each album, had a little, guitar lead or something like that, and Stephen Pierce saying, hey, and yeah, and, that was popular in the genre at the time. But so for me, Ratt was always a much better band for me than Motley Crue was, if you want to compare those two. And also, maybe there was the comparisons because they alternated years. Motley Crue, Shout at the Devil, the Shout, Motley Crue started a little bit before. Motley Crue, Too Fast for Love was 81. The first Ratt EP was 83, and Shout at the Devil was 83. But after that, they alternated years. Motley Crue was 83, 85, Theater of Pain, 87, Girls, 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 89, Dr. Feelgood, and Ratt. So Motley Crue had the odd years, Ratt had the even years. They had Out of the Cellar 84, Invasion, no, they had 85, that threw it off a little bit. And then 86, I'll go back to this before I get too far off track, 86, and then the next one, Reach for the Sky, was 88. So they alternated years. So every year you had either a new Motley Crue or a new Ratt album. So this was Dancing Undercover in 1986. This also, I would say this and Out of the Cellar, and believe it or not, one more, are my favorite Ratt albums. I talked about the trilogy or trinity of, you could say with Metallica, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Injustice for All, or Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, or Motorhead with Overkill, Bomber, Ace of Spades. If you pick three albums that were just unstoppable, Out of the Cellar, Invasion of Your Privacy, and Dancing Undercover. As I said, 10 songs. They don't sound the same, but they follow the same formula. It's really hard to say one is, for me, that one is better than the other. I think they're all, I hate to say it, but because my favorite albums ever, my 10 favorite albums ever are like 30 albums. But any of these first three Ratt albums are to me completely interchangeable, which sounds bad, but it's not. I love it. My favorite on this one, really hard to say. I loved Dance. Again, that was a single, but a great choice for first singles, or for singles, period. Dance, One Good Lover, Body Talk, which was in the Golden Child movie with Eddie Murphy in 86 or something like that. Looking for Love. I would say the only song on this that I wouldn't consider a favorite was It Doesn't Matter. And that's, no, actually, I like that one too. It was never a favorite, but Enough is Enough, the last song, that could also be a favorite. I listened to that song today. Actually, I listened to a couple of songs from this album today. I listened to Dance, Looking for Love, and Enough is Enough today. I love this album. This 86 was a good year for music. 86 was Master of Puppets. Nothing can touch that. Not even this one. But this was maybe, off the top of my head, my favorite album of 86 outside of Master of Puppets. I loved it. And I have a Ratt Dancing Undercover shirt that I just bought a couple of years ago. I'm looking at every song. It's hard to pick one single favorite. Dance, One Good Lover, Slip of the Lip, Body Talk, Looking for Love, 7th Avenue, Enough is Enough. That's like 7 songs. Any of those could be my favorite. This is every bit as good as Out of the Cellar and Invasion of Your Privacy. But I don't know why. I kind of know why. This is where I think Ratt started a little bit to decline in popularity. I'm not sure exactly why. Maybe part of it was because, as I said, they didn't have a ballad. They were still playing arenas. They did an arena tour for this album. Poison opened for them. Look What the Cat Dragged In. Came out this same year, 1986, and Ratt and Poison did a tour together, which was, for me at the time, a dream. Believe it or not, it might be surprising to some people. I was a pretty big Poison fan back then, too. And I thought that was a great match. But Ratt never came to Toronto on this tour, and I'm going to talk about that later, about my concert history with Ratt. But other bands started to overshadow them. Bon Jovi, Ratt toured with Bon Jovi in 1985. Bon Jovi was opening. It was amazing to think that, it wasn't too much longer that Bon Jovi just blew Ratt away in terms of who was, selling more albums and selling more concert tickets too. So I think that Ratt Poison tour was maybe Poison was overshadowing Ratt a little bit. They didn't have I think the singles didn't get as much radio play from this. As I said, You're in Love and Lay It Down were on the radio all the time. There's nothing from this that in the radio where I lived in Toronto. Nothing from this really got played on the radio, maybe other than when it was a brand new. So, but yeah, maybe my first or second or third favorite Ratt album after Out of the Cellar, and another one which I haven't got to yet. You might be surprised. So again, keeping with the even years, 1988 was out of this, Reach for the Sky. I will say Ratt had terrible album covers. This was the worst out of all of them. That's a rotten album cover. I'm not even sure what that is. I mean, obviously you have the hand, and I guess very clever, the hand is reaching for the sky. I don't know what this is. I don't know what this rattan chair is. This album cover sucks. The other ones, I guess, Invasion and Out of the Cellar were good. At least they had a hot chick on the cover. This had nothing. But this was, again, following these 4 especially albums. For me, this again is just as good as the other 3. Out of the Cellar, I won't count the EP. Out of the Cellar, Invasion of Your Privacy, Dancing Undercover, Reach for the Sky. How is this any different than the other 3? To me, it's not. They sound identical. They have the same attitude, the same. Ratt always had a really, really good energy. Very fun, good sound. Everything about Ratt was great, and everything about this album was just the same as the first 3. But they were in clear decline here on this one. But I love this album a lot. Some favorites on this one. I Want a Woman. That was another one. No, Way Cool Jr. was the first single from this album. That was the one. There was a video for that before. Back then, bands used to put out a video, I think, before they put out a single. Or sometimes the introduction of the new music was included in the video. Way Cool Jr. is maybe my least favorite Ratt single. I never really got into that song that much. It's okay. It's not a bad song. I just didn't like it as much as all their other singles. And I also didn't like it as much as anything else on this album. It's probably my least favorite song on this album. Not because it's popular, because as I said, I loved all the Ratt singles. Sometimes it's cool to say, oh, I don't like this just because it's popular. But Way Cool Jr. is maybe my least favorite Ratt single. But I Want a Woman, they did a video for that one too. I love that song and the video. They had another semi-ballad on this, I Want to Love You Tonight. There was no ballad at all on Dancing Undercover. I Want to Love You Tonight was, again, kind of a semi-ballad, but not a full-out power ballad like Wait, White Lion, or what was the Cinderella? Nobody's Fool, or nothing like that. But they didn't do a video for it, and maybe that was why maybe they missed the boat. I don't know. I listened to a few songs from this album today. Chain Reaction, No Surprise in the Bottom Line. What's It Gonna Be, What I'm After. I would say that for me, the second half of this is, I love this album. The second half is even better. I would say from, Chain Reaction. I would say, the last 4 songs, especially No Surprise, Bottom Line, What's It Gonna Be, Sweet Elena, and What I'm After. Those songs are great. I Want a Woman, Don't Bite the Hand That Feeds. This is an excellent album. I'm not sure why Ratt started to really decline. I think they were playing a lot, maybe not smaller buildings, but I think to smaller crowds. I think they were still playing arenas. There just weren't as many people at their shows at this time. Not sure why, but this is a fantastic album, despite the horrible artwork. Reach for the Sky. If you're watching this, you probably know about this album. And if you're watching this and you don't know about this album, you probably don't care anyway. So I'm not going to recommend it. But I love it. Next, 1990, keeping with the even numbered years. This was Detonator. Now this is where things definitely started to change for Ratt. And I'm going to talk about now my Ratt concert history. I'm going to put this down for a minute. When I've talked about these other bands, when I've done their discographies, Metallica and Iron Maiden and Kiss, I've also thrown in a little bit of my concert history with them. Other than talking about Ratt was my first concert that I ever saw in 1984. If you're wondering why, and I know you're not, why I haven't talked about my Ratt concert history, After Ratt played in Toronto opening for Ozzy on April 25th, 1984, they came back in September. It was September 6th or 10th or 15th or something like that at Massey Hall in Toronto. They were headlining. It was Ratt headlining. And I didn't go to that concert. I'm not sure why. This was 1984. I was 14 years old. And when you're 14 years old, you don't have money, and concert tickets are expensive. They were back then $13, $14, $15. which sounds cheap now, but at the time that was a lot of money. And in that summer, I had seen Scorpions. I saw Scorpions on the Love at First Sting tour, and later I saw Iron Maiden later in '84 on the World Slavery Power Slave tour. I guess I just didn't have enough money, but I remember wanting to go. I really wanted to see Ratt. So I was but I didn't go. So in September 1984, Ratt played in Toronto. That was the last time Ratt ever played Toronto. They never played again. I don't know why. Toronto is like the LA or New York of Canada. If a band did a tour, maybe they didn't tour Canada, but they always played Toronto, and I'm not sure why Ratt never. I don't know if they had legal trouble. Sometimes you heard about bands having trouble crossing the border because maybe a member had a criminal past or something like that. I don't know what it was, but Ratt never played Toronto ever again. So I'm going to talk about something in a minute. Now I checked Setlist FM yesterday to make sure. Now I did see Ratt played in Toronto in like 2003 or 4 or 5 or something. I think at the time that was with, I can't remember, Ratt for a long time, maybe through the early 2000s, was just a disaster. The members were coming and going. I think at that time, I don't know if Jizzy Pearl or John Corabi was the singer. And I like both of those guys, the bands that they played in. They were good singers, but for me, Ratt, Stephen Pearcy is the... Percy or Piercy? I don't know. This is like Neil Peart or Neil Peart. They both have P-E-A-R. So I'm not sure. I always said Stephen Pearcy, but I'm not sure. For me, Ratt was about Stephen Pearcy. And even though as great as Warren DeMartini was, like most bands, you identify the bands or you like the band because of the singer. Not, you like the songs, of course, and it's the same with when David Lee Roth left Van Halen or when Ozzy left Black Sabbath. The singer changes everything, and I had zero interest in Ratt. And Robin Crosby, of course, had died at that point. He died in 2002. So I had no interest in seeing Ratt with Jizzy Pearl or John Corabi. I can't even remember, I think Juan Cruce, maybe. I have no idea who was in Ratt. I couldn't have cared less about Ratt in that period. Just this constant rotation of band members, which is kind of continuing recently, which is very sad to see. But now, getting back to Detonator, or not the album yet, but the tour. I waited, man. I used to, read Circus Magazine and Hit Parader and Metal Edge, and Circus Magazine always had tour dates, and I would always see the Ratt tour dates for Invasion of Your Privacy, no Toronto. And Dancing Undercover, no Toronto. Reach for the Sky, no Toronto. Detonator, no Toronto, even though I think I wasn't buying Circus Magazine in 1990. The Detonator tour did not come to Toronto, but it did come to Buffalo, New York. Just outside of Buffalo, there's a place called Darien Lake. So I went with my friends. We drove to New York, and it was going to be Ratt was headlining with LA Guns and Bang Tango. This was in August 1990 or 91. It was August 1990. And so it was a beautiful day. My friends and I, we drove to Buffalo. We were going to go see the Detonator tour finally. And my friend that I went with, Pete, he was as big as me as a Ratt fan. And we were finally so excited to see Ratt. And we drove there. And we got there and we found out the show was canceled. Not postponed, canceled. Not because of coronavirus. This was 30 years ago. The show was canceled. Now, again, Ratt at that point was really... And I don't know why, because all their albums to me were great, but they were a victim of something, and they were really going downhill. I also wanted to see LA Guns, although they at that point, I think that was when was it Hollywood Vampires? I guess was the album in 1981, and I didn't like that album either. So maybe, and Bang Tango, I was not a big fan. So I was very disappointed. This was my one chance to see Ratt since I'd seen them open for Ozzy at that point, 6 years, almost 6.5 years earlier. I was very excited. The show was kiboshed or kiboshed. I'm never sure how to say that word. So I was disappointed, but a little side note, and I'm getting really, really off topic here. We went to a mall in Buffalo instead, and I bought the Mr. Bungle's first CD. So out of a canceled Ratt show, I ended up buying the Mr. Bungle CD, it was CD, which I loved. And I think I bought a King's X, whatever King's X album was out at that time. I bought that too in Buffalo. Shopping in the US was a lot cheaper back then. But my God, getting to this Detonator album all this time later. Again, I love this album. It was fantastic. They followed the same formula. Again, Out of the Cellar, Invasion of Your Privacy, Dancing Undercover, Reach for the Sky, Detonator. 5 albums. That's the most incredibly consistent 5-album stretch that any band has ever had. Maybe some 5 early AC/DC albums. But just incredible. They were, again, not a bad thing. They were completely interchangeable. This had also 10 songs. You could argue it had 11 because they had this intro to Shame, which was not, if you consider that part of the next song, which was Shame, Shame, Shame. It's such a crying shame, shame, shame. So 10 songs. Shame, 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 Love and Use the Dirty Job, which was the first single. Nobody cared about Ratt at that time. I don't remember hearing Love and Use the Dirty Job on the radio once. That was the first single. Top Secret was the last song on here. That was, and I listened to this album today and I loved it as much as I loved it 30 years ago. I listened to the full thing today. I was out for a walk in farmland with this and I love it. As good as the 4 previous albums. They sounded identical. And I don't know why people lost interest in them. Later you could see, because Pearl Jam and Alice in Chains a year later, and Nirvana, that changed everything. But back then, this was still, maybe this was when the tide was beginning to turn. I love this album. They had another kind of semi-ballad on this one with One Step Away. No, what was it? Oh, Giving Yourself Away. That was it. I confused the Away songs. Not One Step Away, but Giving Yourself Away. Giving Yourself Away was a little bit ballady. Not as much as, again, these other hair metal, Mr. Big, Saigon Kick, Love Is On The Way, although Saigon Kick is another one of my favorites. I could actually do one of these videos about Saigon Kick. That's maybe one of my favorite bands of the 90s, Saigon Kick. But yeah, so they weren't full blown out ballads, but Giving Yourself Away was a good one. They did a video for that, which I didn't see until many years later. I think I only saw this in the YouTube era, the video for Giving Yourself Away. I think it was filmed in Japan. I don't remember ever hearing that on the radio. I don't remember ever seeing the video for it because, back then Much Music was still, in Canada, Much Music was still showing videos, but Giving Yourself Away, I don't remember seeing it, but I love that song. Favorite song from this album is maybe Shame, Shame, Shame. Again, that had the great Ratt. That had that You're in Love, up-tempo, energetic, very classic Ratt intro riff. Or maybe Heads I Win, Tails You Lose. Kind of funny about that song, John Bon Jovi sang on that song in the chorus, which was good to see that he wasn't too big for his britches then, because in 1990, Bon Jovi at that point was massive, huge band, the biggest band in the world, at least from this genre. Bon Jovi was bigger than anybody, I think. And so John Bon Jovi came back and helped out Ratt, which didn't really do much, I guess. But he sang on the chorus of Heads I Win, Tails You Lose. That's maybe my favorite song. I may be a doctor, but you're sick as the flu. Sherlock and Having a Clue. It's hard to remember lyrics when you're talking, when you're not hearing the song. But yeah, Heads I Win, Tails You Lose is great. Giving Yourself Away, it's a ballad, but I love that song. Love and Use the Dirty Job, that single, I liked it a lot. Like I said, it didn't get played on the radio. And One Step Away was, again, not quite a ballad, but that song, if it had come out 5 years earlier, I think would have been a huge song. Not sure what happened with Ratt or Ratt fans or why people kind of deserted Ratt at this point, but Detonator is a forgotten album. It's fantastic. I love it. To me, all of these, what am I at, 5 now? They're all, I'll say it again and again, equally as good. Detonator, I love it. This was a compilation album. Now, this was their first, I guess they've had a couple of since then, a couple of compilations since then. Another unique thing about Ratt, they never had a live album. They never, still now, they've never had a live album. I'm not sure why. I don't know if that was because, again, because I didn't really have any concert history with Ratt. I never knew. And back then, before the internet, this was maybe good and bad. Maybe good. You know, now bands can get reputations that they lip sync or that they're really sloppy live, or they play the same set list night after night, tour after tour, or, you know, they're really lazy. Back then, nobody knew things like that. So I don't know what Ratt's reputation was as a live band back then, because I never saw them, and, you know, none of my friends saw them because they never came to Toronto. But they never did a live album. But they did do this compilation album. This was 81, 91. Man, even as far as compilations go, this is top notch. Now remember, back then, this came out in 1991. Obviously, there was no internet, there was no Spotify, there was no YouTube. So the only way you could listen to, you know, take your favorite people, as I said, make mixtapes. So you would put your, you know, 3 favorite songs from this band or this album, and then your 4, and then 2. So this was great to have all their songs together in one place. This is not the kind of thing I listen to now, and I think greatest hits or compilations are kind of pointless now, because with Spotify and, you know, downloading songs instead of albums, you can make your own playlist, things like that. So these compilations are very outdated now, but at the time this was great to have all these in one place to listen to. This was maybe 70 minutes. And as I said, since all the Ratt singles, I really liked them. I hated Smoking in the Boys Room and some other singles that other bands did. I didn't like them, but Ratt had, as I've mentioned, Ratt had great singles. So this was great. This had Tell the World and You Think You're Tough from the EP. And then Round and Round, Wanted Man, Back from War and Lack of Communication from Out of the Cellar. Lay It Down and You're in Love, just 2 songs from Invasion of Your Privacy, but they were huge songs and great songs. Slip of the Lip, Dance, and Body Talk from Dancing Undercover. Way Cool Jr. and I Want a Woman from Reach for the Sky. Lovin' You's a Dirty Job. And, 4 from Detonator. Interesting that they took 4 from Detonator, which was kind of a forgotten album, and only 2 from Invasion of Your Privacy, which was huge. So from Detonator, I Want a Woman, Lovin' You's the Dirty Job, Shame, 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 Giving Yourself Away, and One Step Away. No, Heads I Win, Tails You Lose. 5 songs from Detonator. There's proof right there that Detonator was a great album. And then they had a bonus track. It wasn't a bonus track. Maybe it was. It was only on CD, maybe. But Nobody Rides for Free, which I think has become... I think people like that song. I think that was a Ratt song that came along maybe a little bit too late. If it had come out some years before, I think people really would have loved and embraced Nobody Rides for Free. I love that song. I think it was on the soundtrack originally for Point Break. Or maybe it was not, I think it was. But I'm not sure if it was on the soundtrack before this or after this. But Nobody Rides for Free is a great song. Excellent compilation. They put all the right songs on this. So as far as compilations go, this was as good as and that's later was a Ratt song, As Good as It Gets. I keep saying unique things about Ratt. They never put their lyrics in an album. In every single album I've talked about so far, and the ones that I'm going to talk about still, they never put their lyrics. Maybe, Ratt, I guess Stephen Percy was the lyric writer. He wasn't known as a great songwriter. I mean, who cares? I can't say anything bad. Ratt, as I said, is one of my favorite bands ever. And but he, Slip and Slide, Take a Ride, You Want the Best of Both Worlds, or You Take the Midnight Subway Train, You're Calling All the Shots. There wasn't too much depth to Ratt lyrics. I don't know if that was why they didn't print them in the booklets, but they didn't. So that's 8191 is the name of this one, if I didn't say it, a Ratt compilation album. Now at this point, this was I'm taking a break from holding these plastic CDs. At this point, Ratt was pretty much over. 1991 was the year that, for lack of a better word, if hair metal or glam metal was bad, especially hair metal, Grunge was an even worse term. That's such a stupid term for music. Nevertheless, or irregardless, it was being featured a lot more prominently in 91. The first Pearl Jam album, Nirvana album, came out in 91. Alice in Chains, although to me they were a metal band, came out in 1990. People were clearly moving away and also really turning up their noses at this kind of music. Nobody really cared about Ratt, Motley Crue. Even Iron Maiden was suffering at this point. Kiss, all of these, they were kind of the boomers of that generation. And people just didn't care about them. They were the old guard, and now people wanted to listen to Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and Nirvana and Alice in Chains and maybe Smashing Pumpkins. And I loved all those bands except Smashing Pumpkins, who I hate. But I still liked Ratt, but they were non-existent then. And then, in 1997, there was an album that Ratt did called Collage, and I don't have it here with me now. I did buy it. I have bought every single Ratt album, but I don't have Collage. I don't know where it is. Might be back home in Canada. But it was, now I'm a little bit confused about this album, about Collage. From what I remember, back then, as I said earlier, you're buying Hit Parader and Circus and Metal Edge, and you always knew what was coming out and what was coming up and who produced it and the release date. Everybody knew that. I think at this point that it existed, but it wasn't like it was 5-10 years earlier. So I remember, and I could be wrong about this, I have two versions. I'm not sure which is correct. I seem to remember seeing it in HMV, which was a big record chain or record store in Canada. And I had no idea that it was out. I looked at it. This was the same with Exodus, Impact is Imminent in 1990 and Slayer, Undisputed Attitude in 1996. Albums that I had no idea. I saw them and I thought, man, I can't believe that Ratt and Exodus and Slayer have new albums out and I didn't know about them. So from what I remember, I saw Collage at HMV and I bought it immediately. I thought, wow, Ratt, a new Ratt album. And I took it home. I had no idea anything about it, and it turned out that it was a compilation album. But not a compilation like the 81-91 that I just showed, but a compilation of old songs that... and I'm still not sure about this. I'm a little bit confused. I'll get to that in a minute. But so I seem to remember buying it. I don't know if it was new at the time, but I thought, wow, a new Ratt album. And I was disappointed, I think, that it was not new music, that it was old music that was re-released. Now, the other thing I think of, and I think this is wrong, was that I found it online years later. I got on the internet full-time in January 99. I've been on the internet every day of my life since January 99. And I don't think this is true, and this might apply to the 99 Ratt album, which I'm going to talk about next. And now that I'm saying it out loud, I think that's what it is. So I'm gonna stick with the Collage story that I bought at HMV. Now, anyway, to talk about the album, it's not very good. This was, and I guess it wasn't meant to be. And even I listened to it earlier this week. I listened to it from every song from beginning to end for the first time, probably since it came out, to be honest. And sometimes you need, with music or with people or some other things, you need time away. And sometimes the time away is good. Sometimes it doesn't change anything. The time away from the Ratt Collage album didn't change anything. I just don't like it. And it's kind of weird. It was the first and maybe I think the only Ratt album that didn't sound like Ratt. As I said, had a very distinct. They were unmistakable. Their guitar sound. You just had to hear 10 seconds of a Ratt song, not even with vocals. And you knew it was Ratt. And I always loved Bobby Blotzer's drummer. I haven't talked about that, but I always thought when you talked with your friends about your favorite, it was a constant thing among metalheads in the 80s. And even now, you talk about your favorite drummer, your favorite guitarist, and your favorite album, and everything was favorite this, favorite that. I always loved Bobby Blotzer. I thought he was a great drummer. So this album, it just didn't have the Ratt sound. It didn't have... And I think Bobby Blotzer had a very unique drum sound, and Warren DeMartini, for sure, or we can say Ratt in general, had a very unique guitar sound. And this album didn't have it. And I don't know, now this is again where there's a little bit of confusion. I was under the impression all this time that those were old songs that were recorded long time ago, before even the first EP. and they just put them out on Collage in 1987. They just dust them off and put them on. Now, I looked that up on Wikipedia because I wanted to find out more about it. And it said on there that it was recorded between 82 and 97. But that's all it says. So I don't know if they, I don't know how much re-recording they did in 97. I mean, for all I know, it might have just been a few vocal lines. It might have been all vocals. I have no idea. But it doesn't have the Ratt sound. I think the songs are pretty good, but they're missing, and this is the opposite of the album I'm going to talk about next. I think the songs were good. They just sounded, I guess they sounded like demos, which maybe for the most part, they were. But when they didn't have that Ratt sound, that Ratt energy, the Ratt stamp or the Ratt trademark, good songs, but nothing good. My favorites from that album, Mother Blues, I really like. That's, for me, the only song that really, I can say the only song that I really like. The other ones that were okay were Steel River, Dr. Rock, and Diamond Time Again was pretty good too. Other than that, there's really nothing on Collage that really was worth listening to for me to listen to again after maybe 20 years. They were just missing it. Next, I'm reaching for the Ratt album that's yellow with a little bit of black, and it says Ratt in red. I thought I had it. I know I bought it. Like I said, I bought every Ratt album, but I couldn't find that one. This was kind of the same thing as Collage. This was a self-titled album. It came out in 1999. It was their first real full studio album since Detonator, 9 years earlier. And this is kind of the opposite of Collage that I just talked about. It had Collage had the good songs, but it didn't really sound good. For me, the Ratt 1999 album, not the 83 EP that was also called Ratt, I think it sounded like Ratt again, but the songs were just not that good. These were not just, they didn't have, the Ratt energy. They were a little bit slower. I wouldn't say bluesier, but they didn't have that fun, party, good time Ratt atmosphere of all the other Ratt albums. And this is another one I listened to earlier this week. I listened to the full album for the first time maybe in 18, 17, 20 years. I don't know. And just not that good. The two songs that I do like, and I think they are really good albums, and that for me, they're the ones that are closest to the classic Ratt sound, were Breakout, which probably should have been the opening song on the album, but because it was the most energetic. Although I like that they hit it. It was like track 4 or 5 or something. So Breakout, and what's the other song I like from that album? We Don't Belong, which was again a little bit, not ballady, but a little bit of a quiet song. So Breakout and We Don't Belong, those are very good Ratt songs. I like those songs a lot. But the rest of that album, there was just nothing. When I listened to it last week, I was kind of waiting, saying, give me some, catch my attention, but nothing really happened. I went back and also looked on Wikipedia, and something I guess I knew at the time, but I forgot, because I haven't looked at the physical album in, as I said, many, many years. They had a lot of outside writers on that album, including Jack Russell from Great White. He co-wrote one of the songs I like, one of the ones I mentioned. I can't remember if it was We Don't Belong or Breakout. I think it was Breakout. But yeah, so Jack Russell co-wrote, I think, a couple of songs, and there were a couple of other names on there of co-writes, I think, that I didn't recognize. And at this point, I'm not sure even if I should have looked this up. Did Robin Crosby play in that album? I don't know. I think he was pretty sick by that point. He died in 2002, and I know he was sick for quite some time before that. I think he didn't play on that album. And again, I have no idea if they even toured behind that album. Everything fell apart for Ratt after that. From, like with, the cutoff of 2000, everybody thinks that era died in 2000 or at the end of 99. Some people were happy about that, some people weren't. But yeah, for Ratt, clearly after 99, then they just became, as I mentioned earlier, just a constant rotation of John Corabi and Jizzy Pearl and all these guys. It seemed every time you turned around, there was a new member in Ratt. So that's it. So that was 99. Now, 10 years passed when Ratt had just nothing going on. These guys coming and going. And then in 2009, they released this. Now, just quickly to get the bad out of the way, what a horrible album cover. It's terrible. It's even worse, I think, than Reach for the Sky. As I said, their album covers, aside from the ones with the hot chicks, were pretty bad. I would say this and Reach for the Sky, even Detonator, I don't know what that is. It's garbage. Crap. Yeah, so this was Infestation, by the way, 2009. So really bad album cover, really, really bad, horrible. Don't let that fool you, because this is my favorite Ratt album. That's true. I said earlier there were 3. For me, I think Out of the Cellar, Dancing Undercover, and this could be my favorite. And I think the reason why I like this so much is just because, what a comeback. This sounds, I have so much to say about this one, because this video is not long enough as it is. As I said just a couple of minutes ago, from 99 on, Ratt, they were a joke. They weren't recording anything. They had constant lineup changes. That type of music was, very passé. Although I never stopped liking the music from that era. Just, newer stuff was going nowhere. So I had no expectations for this. Now, this was almost the full lineup. This was the classic lineup minus Robin Crosby, who had died in 2002. But he was replaced by Carlos Cavazo from Quiet Riot, which was a great replacement, at least in name. I think we have these associations with, okay, well, Quiet Riot was part of that same era and same idea of Ratt. So Carlos Cavazo was a great fit for Ratt. Who knows how much he even contributed to this album? Maybe it was all Warren DeMartini. But I'm going to put this down because I keep having this habit of pointing at things, and it annoys me. So Carlos Cavazo came in, and so two reasons why I like this. Most of all, I guess, well, is the music. But yeah, it was just, there were no expectations for a Ratt album in 2009. Come on. So it was Piercy, Blotzer, DeMartini, and Juan Crucier was back for the first time in, I don't know how many years. So that was one. So maybe with the new lineup, you say, wow, Ratt, they're back. But then when I heard this album, the first song that they, I don't know if at this point if you called them singles, but the first song that was released, that was made public, was Best of Me. My God, that was, to me, it was 1985 again, Best of Me. The opening riff, it's similar to, Lay It Down or something. It's from, I'd say the first note, it sounds like Ratt. That's like the classic Warren DeMartini guitar. And not, some bands, they try to sound, I think Kiss in their last couple of albums, Monster and Sonic Boom, I think it was very obvious that they were trying to recapture something, the old Kiss style. But in my opinion, I thought they both were pretty bad albums, with a few exceptions. But Ratt got it perfect. They I guess, tried to sound like they did, and they were perfect. It didn't sound dated, but at the same time, it did sound like 1985, so maybe I'm contradicting myself. So Best of Me, boom, I was a huge Ratt fan again, just like I had been for, most of the 80s and into the 90s. This may as well have been the follow-up to Out of the Cellar, or Invasion of Your Privacy. If this had been the first Ratt album, it would have been just as big as Out of the Cellar was. If this had been the follow-up to Out of the Cellar, it would have been just as big as Invasion of Your Privacy was. Now, obviously, times were very, very different in 2009. Nobody was buying records anymore. And this album probably sold a few thousand copies. That's it. As I say, maybe my favorite Ratt album. They got everything that I liked about Ratt is contained in this album. Everything. Eat Me Up Alive was that had what a riff to open that album. Was again very, very fast, similar to, in the same vein as Shame, Shame, Shame. Maybe what else? Something fast. You're Insane, something like that. Best of Me was great. A Little Too Much. Look Out Below. Last Call. Again, almost any of these songs. Lost Weekend. Are You Ready for Big Fun? You're Mine for the Taken. Last Call was great. I'm going to Drive You in the Pink Cadillac. As Good as It Gets. I'll Tell You Something Is As Good as It Gets. Garden of Eden. Take a Big Bite. Take Me Home was again a little bit of a Ratt ballad, not full out ballad, but how Ratt does ballad. And then the last song, I can't read. What was the last song? Don't Let Go. I can't read it. They have all the song titles overlap, but it was I can't read it, but it was Don't Let Go. She said, "Turn me over and inside out." Then she asked me to do it again. I love this album. I can't say it enough how much this album rules. I love it. I listened to this probably more than any other Ratt album over the last, since it came out in 2009 as a full album. I listened to this more than Out of the Cellar, more than Invasion of Your Privacy. And I think every Ratt fan loved this album. This is what a comeback album should have been. They were gone for 10 years, I guess. This is how a comeback album should be. They got everything perfect. This is, I don't know what else to say. I just can't say enough about this album. Now, a small, I can't even say a bad thing. There was a song that was, you know, by this point, bands were doing these bonus songs that if you download it, they weren't on the CD, but if you download it from iTunes, you get these bonus tracks, and there was a song from this called Scatter, which was not that great. And I'm kind of glad that I see it as a separate song. It was okay, but it was, if it had been part of the full album, it would have been for sure my least favorite. And they also had 3 not live tracks, but live in studio tracks that were recorded on Rockline. It was Way Cool Jr., You Think You're Tough, and I can't remember what the other one was, but I downloaded those songs for free, of course. And but oh man, Infestation is just incredible. So that's it for the Ratt discography. I did have one last chance to see them last year, I think it was. They played at a big festival here in Mexico City, but you know they were probably playing 45 or 50 minutes, and tickets were really expensive. And traditionally, these festivals don't go well. There's a lot of problems. It's either too hot or it's pouring rain. Everything is, you know, the food is expensive. You're there all day. The sound is usually no good. That was my most recent chance to see Ratt, but I passed on that for those reasons. And now, sadly, again, Ratt has become a joke, like they were, you know, in the early 2000s. Warren DeMartini quit a year or 2 ago. Blotzer, there was a horrible problem with Blotzer. What a nut job that guy is. Totally wacky guy. He's gone. Juan Crucier is still there. That's all it is. It's Piercy and Crucier. And even then, they get these guys. They had Pete Holmes, the drummer from Black and Blue. They had 2 guitarists. The one guitarist was in the band for like 6 months and he quit. So now Ratt is back. They kind of went, you know, full circle and then back. So I don't have much hope for Ratt recording or live. But what else can I say about Ratt? One of my favorite bands for that style of music, that again, hair metal, 80s, glam metal, whatever you want to call it, the best. They're not Metallica for me, or you know, Pearl Jam or something like that, but none of their peers, in my opinion, can touch Ratt. So that's all I have to say about Ratt. Wow, that was longer, I think, than I thought it would be for a relatively short discography. That was longer than I thought it was. I love Ratt. Like I said, I could talk about music all day, and I especially could talk about Ratt all day. So that's it from Ratt. I think I'm going to do 2 more of these videos with and but you'll have to find out who those bands are when I decide to do them. Thank you for sitting through this, or for scrolling through, whatever you did. Thanks, and see you later.